please subscribe, hit that like button, and as always, leave a comment, and thank you for enjoying the video.
Shot to right, slicing toward the pesky pole, down the line, and it's going to be out of here! Line down the right field line toward the pesky pole, leaping up, and that ball is gone! That's a home run! A lot of our Nesson team as well. High fly down the right field line, headed toward the pesky pole, that one tucked in, and that ball is going to be against the wall, and into second base. Number retired, and now Rafael Devers trying to retire that baseball inside the pesky pole.
Welcome to another episode of the Pesky Podcast. I'm your host, the Ritt. With me, like always, is the OG George Sutherland, bringing you episode 99, the Phillies series preview with our boy Anthony, brought to you by BSEN, Boston Sports Entertainment Network. George, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Not much, man. Just happy that the Sox managed to split with the White Sox because it was in serious doubt for quite a while this afternoon.
Man, what's going on, Beast Mode? I'm sitting there and happy you're stopping in tonight. So, but George, man, let's just sit there touch base real quick. How the hell do we split a series with the most abysmal, possibly record-setting, worst Major League Baseball team of all time, the Chicago White Sox? Like, I am so glad Tina had something to do last week and was not able to come on to discuss the White Sox.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll hear from her. Look, you go in and you are in the second game of the series. You're facing a team that's lost 14 games in a row. Okay, law of averages is working against you, and then you face a pitcher like Crochet, who is a nasty left-hander. Okay, so you get that you're going to lose that one, but yesterday, and then to be having to go into extra innings to win today. No, I'm sorry. We're a much better team than that. Even though we are a 500 team, and they must have said it a million times on the broadcast today, you're facing the worst team in baseball. Okay. Act like it and beat them to a pulp. And errors. I mean, my God, three errors in an inning. I mean, come on, guys. We went through this earlier in the season. Everybody take a deep breath. Don't try to play above what you can, and just do your job.
Yeah. Sometimes I think that the Red Sox think errors count as runs because 3 errors and then the White Sox score 3 runs. We should have ended that series, at least 3-1. Crochet, he was knitting the strike zone, no pun intended. But man, it's crazy. But let's sit there and move forward. Tomorrow's an off day. Then we slide into a 3-game series, and this is the start of probably our worst stretch all season because we got the Phillies, then the Yankees right behind them. So, but we're gonna bring in a guy that we had last year when we covered the Philadelphia Phillies series. Let's bring it on in. Anthony, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing great, boys. Good to see you again. Good to be back on your show. I'm looking forward to this series because it's always fun when you get Philly and Boston together for any sport. But it doesn't happen often enough in baseball, so it's good to do it.
Yeah. So, and Anthony, you guys, we're here talking about us splitting against the Chicago White Sox, and then you guys are overseas in London for the London series, and you guys end up splitting with the Mets. Mm-hmm. So how did that series? How is the feel over there? In London, I did watch the ceremonial first. What do you want to call it? Like double play because they had Utley there, and stuff. So, what was the atmosphere in covering the London series? Because it was great.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was not in London. I didn't make that trip. It's a little bit of a cost prohibitive trip to go to London. But I watched both games. Was intensely watching and intensely involved. Look, I'm not trying to knock Mets fans. That place, 55,000 people. I guarantee you at least 40,000 were from Philly, or were rooting for the Phillies, wearing Phillies gear. Really, just it was a cool scene to see that many Philadelphia fans that far away from home. I mean, Philly fans travel well, just like Boston fans, New York fans. They all pretty much travel well. Mm-hmm. But to go overseas, I mean, you guys remember what it was like a couple years ago, or was it about 5 years ago when it was Yankees, Red Sox over there, right? I mean, you remember, your fans going over there. That's pretty cool to see all your fans make that trip. To see that many Philadelphia fans is pretty cool. And the Phillies were great yesterday, and they had this game won twice today, and they blew it. I put it a little bit on the manager, the bullpen, which has been fantastic. A couple guys didn't have it today. I questioned the first move going to Gregory Soto instead of Matt Strahm, who's been fantastic and should be a National League All-Star. And then Jose Alvarado has been really good as the closer. He struggled today, and they left him in. Like he was over 30 pitches, and he hits Alonso and throws a wild pitch that gives up tying and go ahead runs. I mean, can't have that kind of stuff happen, right? I mean, so I just questioned some managerial decisions today. But look, you can't really complain when a team is 25 games over 500. I mean, really can't at this point. They're 45-20, the best record in baseball. No one saw that coming. So it's hard to, you knock a loss like that. But really, when you go back at it and look at every loss that the Phillies have had going back into April, they've got 2 losses since April 24th where they were not, they didn't have a chance to tie or win the game with the guy at the plate in the last out, right? So only 2 since April 24th. That's pretty darn good. That's pretty darn good setup. So you can complain in the moment, but overall, I mean, it's just one loss out of. They're going to lose 40 more games this year, so at some point you're going to have to lose them. It doesn't matter that it was to the Mets.
Yeah, you guys are well above 500, and you're going to be playing Mr. 500, the Boston Red Sox, and it's pretty much our motto, and if you look at it, like, we have a slew of injuries, throughout, and I am, on the other hand, unlike a lot of Red Sox Nation, I'm really optimistic. We're still in 3rd place in our division, and we are at 500. If we could stay there as we get our Tristan Casas back, Masataka Yoshida back, if we can continue to be 500 as we're getting healthier, then all of a sudden, okay, things might look up, and there we are. We could be sitting at the wild card right now. So, George, you want to sit there and have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this has been such a bizarre year. We've talked about it. I've written about it. It's like everybody's waiting for the next shoe to drop. Who is it this time? Well, today you had both O'Neill and Devers out of the lineup. All right, a lineup now with 0 thump in it. All right, thank God that Hamilton managed to put one out of the yard, because that team, just as configured, is not a home run hitting team. Everything that's happened to them, it doesn't seem to faze them. It's the next man up. We got this. And they approached it, and I keep saying it, why not us? Okay? They could have easily packed it in by now. I mean, seriously, who'd have blamed them? Story goes down, Giolito goes down before the season starts. They lose a variety, then they start losing people left, right, and sideways. They could have easily said, yep, we're out, right? Nope, they're hanging in there. I credit the fact that they're a young, hungry ball club, and the fact that Cora is pumping them up and pumping them up. You know what? It's working. And, getting somebody like a Casas back, getting Tyler O'Neill back, to a healthy Tyler O'Neill. And let's see what Yoshida does after he's been off his feet for about a 5-week period, right? That will help. But yeah, There are some nights it's a miracle that we can even field a team, considering some of the players we've had to bring up. So,
Anthony,
I've actually been kind of impressed by the Sox kind of hanging in there, and they're doing it with obviously with their pitching staff, right? I mean, the pitching's been fantastic, and that's why I'm kind of really looking forward to this series, because the Phillies pitching has been great, and the Red Sox pitching has been great, and so you're really going to have three excellent pitching matchups. I know you guys like to look at them, as part of the show. We'll do that, but at the same time, I mean, just from an overview, it's the Phillies have four really strong starting pitchers. You're getting three of them, and the Red Sox three best are going right. And this year for Boston, right. So it's really going to be a nice little matchup of pitching. And I really think that's what it's going to come down to in this series. And so I think it's interesting. It's going to be fun to watch. It's good baseball, and I love great pitching. I know everybody in 2024 is big on, everybody wants to see offense and home runs and everything else. And, George, I'm sure you're kind of, more my generational kind of thing in that you love those good pitching duels, right? Pitchers, when their starters are going 7 innings, 8 innings, right? You love that stuff. And that's the thing about
up and down, everybody's going, the strikes are being called and good stuff. Good pitching is such a treat to watch. It is. There's a lack of it in baseball today. So I love good pitching matchups.
Yeah, I do too. So I think this is the first time since the opening weekend, really, where for the Phillies anyway, where you look at it and say 1, 2, 3 really good pitching matchups, in a series that's upcoming. So I'm excited for it. This is a tough stretch for the Phillies. Let's be honest. I mean, they had to play Milwaukee right before London. Now they swept them, which was a great series win for the Phillies. Then they had to fly to London, play 2 games in another country, fly back, and they're on the road for 6 against Boston and Baltimore. So this is a tough stretch that the Phillies they're in, right? 1-4 of the first 5, but the next 6 are not going to be easy. So that's why this is a really good test for them and see where they're at as a team, even though that they're way out in front in the National League East. It's still going to be a worthwhile test to see what a couple of these American League teams have to offer.
Yeah, and personally, we would love for you guys to sit there and handle Baltimore for us, because we have been personally abysmal against our own division this season. So,
well, what I think is going to be interesting about that, not that I want to talk about a series that has nothing to do with the Red Sox, although I guess you guys have marginal interest. Phillies, an hour and 20 minutes from Baltimore, right? And the Orioles draw very well. But something tells me it's Father's Day weekend. It's a weekend series. This Phillies group, if 55,000 people can make it over to London, England, to watch 2 baseball games, what's it going to be like getting down there in Baltimore? How good of a crowd is that going to be for the Orioles? That could be a little bit disconcerting for a younger team like as talented as they are. They're young. That could be a little bit disconcerting when you get all those Philly fans showing up in your ballpark.
Yeah, I remember 2 years ago, maybe 3. I used to go down in Red Sox Baltimore, and you look in the crowd, and there'd be 50-50, 60-40. Red Sox Orioles fans. I was just there last year at the end of September down there in Baltimore, and I'm looking around and I'm trying to find a Red Sox jersey, and it was really hard because the game I went to was the one where they clinched the division, and parking was outrageous.
It's never easy. It's not well located in that regard.
No. So, but and Anthony, let's sit there and dive into this pitching matchup.
Yep.
Because just like you guys, I love great pitching. I would much rather see pitching dominate because it's more respected in this day and age. I was actually at a Red Sox Rockies game where Chris Sale had 17 strikeouts. It was absolutely ridiculous. They lost. I'm still trying to figure out, to this day, how they lost, but Brandon Workman gave up his only home run in a reliever spot all year to lose that game. But game 1, Zach Wheeler for you guys, and we're throwing out Cutter Crawford. You guys are throwing out Wheeler, very respectable numbers that he's put up. Crawford is, very good numbers, but the record does not show how well that he's been pitching, because a lot of the times we have, just like today, 3 errors in an inning, where errors cost our team a lot of runs and a lot of wins. So what can we expect from Wheeler? And how's he pitching this well this easily in the season?
Yeah, I mean, so the interesting thing about Wheeler's always been one of the top pitchers in the sport, or at least since he's gotten to Philadelphia. He was pretty good with the Mets, but ever since he got to the Phillies, he's been top of their rotation. The thing that's interesting about Wheeler this year is he added a pitch, which you think, oh, he's 34 years old. He's adding pitches now. He actually added a splitter to throw against lefties. And it's something he hadn't thrown before. And lefties were actually kind of hitting his fastball a little bit last year. As good as he was, he struggled a little bit against lefties. And so, teams would load up left-handed bats against him in the lineup. This year, they're not hitting him nearly as well because he's got that new pitch that kind of dives in on left-handed batters. And so he's been very effective. Most of his starts this year have been really, really good. And he's certainly right now I would say he's a top 3. If you're looking at first of all, if you look at ESPN's Cy Young predictor thing that they have 1, 2, and 3 all Phillies, which is crazy for the National League. And they have Wheeler at 3, believe it or not, behind Suarez and Nola. But Wheeler's been typical Zach Wheeler. He strikes out a bunch of guys. His walk rate's up a little bit, but he doesn't give up the long ball. He doesn't give up a lot of hits. I think 5.8 hits per 9 inning that he has this year, and he throws a ton of innings. He's among the league leaders in innings pitched this year. So he's just tough, man. He's tough no matter what. ERA plus, I don't know if you guys are big on that number, but he's 180, which means he's 80% better than league average. So that's pretty darn good. But I'm a big Cutter Crawford fan as a guy, I'll be honest with you. I'm a seam head, right? I will go cover a game and then I'll get home after a game and I'll put on the MLB package and watch everybody else. And I'm a big Cutter Crawford guy. Was last year too. I really kind of liked him a lot. And I think he's pitched even better than I thought he would pitch coming in. I mean, I still think Wheeler is probably the better pitcher, but this is not going to be an easy game for the Phillies against Cutter Crawford. The way he's been throwing, he doesn't give up a lot of hits either, doesn't give up the long, but Phillies are more of a home run team, and he doesn't give up a lot of home runs. If I remember correctly, I think he's only given up 6 so far this year. And so I look at that and I say, this isn't going to be easy. Flying back over from London, readjusting to the time zone, got to arrive in Boston. You only get the 1 day off, right? And then you're right back at it again. This one scares me a little bit. If you're looking at him saying this one could be, I could look at it and say maybe Boston. This is the one that Boston steals.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I was looking at that. I was looking at the London series because how long of a flight is it? Do you know by chance?
It's like 6.5 hours, I believe. Yeah, something like that. 6.5, 7 hours. So I mean, it's a charter. I mean, it might be a little bit shorter going into Boston than it would be coming to Philly because it's more even straight across the Atlantic. I don't know. I've never flown London to Boston, so I've only flown it to Philly. So I think I really do think that's the first game is the toughest one in my mind, especially since you're going up against such a good pitcher like Cutter Crawford.
Yeah, just like you, Anthony. I'm a huge Cutter Crawford fan. I sit there and it's really bad because I predicted at the beginning of the season that once again he has the most wins on the Red Sox, and just his defense has failed him time in and time out. George, what can we expect from Cutter? And remember, he does have the extra day rest with the bullpen game for today.
That was one of the things I was going to talk about. First of all, the Phillies, anytime you're traveling from Europe to the States, it screws you up for a couple of days. And they're probably going to have some after effects from drinking warm beer for a couple of days as well. having experienced it myself. But Crawford's on an extra day of rest, and Ritt will say, and I think Ritt will agree, last couple of starts he hasn't been overly sharp, and I think this is one of those games where he benefits from that day, and I think you're going to see the best version of Crawford. When Crawford gets in trouble, he gets a little bit wild, and that's what generally gets him in trouble. You're right; he's not a big home run deliverer. And that's a good thing. But when he gets in trouble, he starts missing his spots, and that's when you get a couple of runners on the stray single or the bad play. Next thing you know, he's going to they score a couple of runs against him, and he tries to press at that point, try to stop the bleeding, and that's when he gets himself in trouble. But he has exceeded my expectations. He came into the season thinking he was your number 3. He's probably right now. He's probably the number 2 or the number 3, depending upon, because right now with Tanner Houck is obviously our number 1 given his performance. But yeah, he's he threw 125 innings. We're expecting him to see. Ritt and I both figure he's into 165 to 180 this year because he's just settled down and he's just a totally focused pitcher. And you've seen it, and he's a lot better than he was last year, and he looked good last. Yeah, I think you're in to see the best version of Crawford that he can bring.
I'll give you guys something to chew on a little bit, make you feel a little bit better about this matchup too. You talk about the extra day rest, and that helps him, right? And most pitchers, you would think it would help them. Not Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler is a machine when it comes to his routine, and he is so good with 4 days rest, which is normal rest. In his career, on 4 days rest, he's 2.96 ERA, 1.09 WHIP, right? Really 53 and 24, really good. When he has more rest, this week he's going to have 7 days rest going into that game tomorrow. With 6 or more days rest in his career, he's only 12 and 11. With a 3.79 ERA, and his WHIP goes up to 1.20, almost a full point, more than a full point up. So, Wheeler's never been a real good guy with extra rest. So, really kind of an interesting thing. That's another thing that I look at and say, yeah, this one scares me a little bit. And I think you're getting a good pitcher with an extra day of rest that will help him. Whereas the Phillies coming back from Europe with the pitcher who doesn't like to have extra rest, having 2 extra days basically before he gets to throw again.
Yeah, that is, really something there, because you would think.
Did he travel with the team?
He did. They were there. Yeah, he was there. Yeah. You know why? You know why that is? Every player who made that trip got an extra $70,000 bonus from Major League Baseball for going.
Well, there you go. Hey, listen, they're paying $15,000 to mic up on Apple TV, and we watched Kike Hernandez boot one because he was too busy talking to the broadcasters. So yeah, every penny helps, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but Cutter Crawford, his last couple games, he's been abysmal his last 7 games. 5.27 ERA. He's given up 24 earned runs. He's only had 37 strikeouts to 13 walks. So Cutter Crawford, hopefully he's working with Andrew Bailey to get the mechanics to get back to the what we've seen the first couple games of the season. So game 2, and we're gonna sit there and Wednesday night. You guys are throwing Christopher Sanchez, and we're throwing George's favorite, the Pitbull Pavetta. So tell us a little bit about your pitcher, Anthony.
Well, Christopher Sanchez is a guy no one's talking about, because everybody's talking about Suarez he got off to this historic start, and Wheeler's a perennial Cy Young candidate, and Nola's been maybe better than both of them, certainly more consistent. Only had really one bad start, his first start of the year, and he's had a dozen great ones since. But nobody's talking about Christopher Sanchez, and I'll tell you, this is a guy that is going to surprise people when they watch him. He has ramped up his his sinker to the point now where he's throwing it at 97. He was not doing that last year, and he was good last year, but he was not throwing it that hard. Well, why does that matter, right? If you start starting pitchers, man, you don't want to throw out your arm or whatever. He has one of the best changeups I've seen in baseball, Christopher Sanchez. It's one of the most unhittable changeups, and most teams can't hit it. I think batters are hitting like 148 against it or something ridiculous like that. And so if he can get that fastball up to 97, and then you're dropping that changeup at 10 miles an hour less from the same arm slot, and it falls off the table right before it gets to home plate, it makes it unhittable. He's down to 2.71 ERA, which is fourth best in Major League in the National League, I should say, not Major League Baseball, fourth best in the National League among starters. So he's been really, really good as well. Doesn't throw as many innings. He doesn't go as long as the Wheeler and Nola, so you're probably going to get into the bullpen a little bit sooner against Sanchez. Comes from the left side, so your righties are going to be in the lineup in that game. But yeah, he's been really, really good, really impressive. Better than anyone probably thought he was going to be. And I would say, when I say anyone, I include the Phillies in that. He was a guy, if I take you back to last year, he was in the minor leagues. And he was a guy that had been up and down for a couple seasons prior to that. And they didn't particularly think there was much left there. But they were so tied up with injuries and not having a regular fifth starter that they called him up just to make a spot start. Did a nice job in that start, and he stayed in the rotation and ended up being really good. And it was like, okay, well, he's a good number 5. That's fine. If that's what he ends up being, that's his ceiling. Well, this year he's jumped up to the 4 spot in the rotation ahead of Taijuan Walker. And really, if you look at his numbers, he's pitching like a 3, which is unbelievable, right? So, there's a lot to like about him. And you got to keep in mind the matchup on that game is really extra spicy because Pivetta was a former Phil. Didn't have a great end to his time here before he got traded to Boston. And at a time when, both Sanchez and Pivetta were both kind of in the organization together, trying to find their way and make their way there. Here's Sanchez now in the spot that probably a lot of people thought Pivetta would have when he was pitching for the Phillies, going up against Pivetta. So I think that's another little interesting nugget to make those two go up against each other.
Yeah, Pivetta over the last 7 games, it's minus his start where he came back against Atlanta in Atlanta. He has been really consistent. He hasn't been giving up a lot of runs. His strikeout to walk ratio is phenomenal. 41 strikeouts to 9 walks. George, what else can we sit there and talk about Pivetta?
Well, as Cutter Crawford is your binky, Pivetta is mine. You cannot ask for a better competitor on the mound when he takes the hill. The thing that's really amazed me in his last 2 starts is he goes on these strikeout tears. He struck out 8 in a row. Okay, tying Roger Clemens' Red Sox record, and then he strikes out 9 in his last. He strikes out 9 in his last appearance. He's found what he had in the first 2 games before he got hurt. When he came off the IL, he was struggling a little bit. Went to the Andrew Bailey Advanced Pitching Dynamics Lab and figured out what it was, and he's come back and just been like fabulous to watch. You got to root for him because he had such a horrible year the beginning of last year. This year, right about this time last year, he got pushed to the bullpen, didn't like it, didn't pop off, but was unhappy about it. Did his time in the bullpen, was the long guy on the many openers that the Red Sox used to have to throw last year, worked his way back to the rotation after he found his sweeper. So now he's gone from a pitcher who could spot his fastball high and low to now being able to throw something east-west to keep the hitters off of balance. He's a more complete pitcher, and you throw his competitive nature in, he's a dangerous pitcher to come up against. And by the way, Sanchez, as I was looking it up, I said, well, this kid's really done something this year. So I was actually, when I was looking ahead, I'm like, this should be a very good matchup because the kid's actually done well, and we're hoping that Pivetta is keeping the string alive that he's had the last 2 to 3 games where he's just been out there and just firing the ball and keeping hitters off balance. So
his last start against Atlanta, I watched a little bit of that game, and he was very good, very, very good against the Braves in that game. My one thing that I will say, and this is where I think there's a slight edge for the Phillies in this matchup, is Nick Pivetta doesn't throw a lot of pitches. He doesn't throw a ton of pitches, right? I mean, just the nature of who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing about the Phillies is they work starting pitchers quick. They get starting pitchers out of the game and into the other team's bullpen. Not that it's an advantage to get into the bullpen of the Red Sox, as you guys know. The Red Sox have a very good bullpen for the most part. So it's not like it's an advantage to get there, but they get through starters fast. And so I wonder if they make Pivetta work. He's been a little bit wild, even though he's had 3 good starts in a row. He does walk a few guys. I think he's had 7 walks his last 3 games. So like that's something. They take a lot of pitches. Maybe they get a couple walks there. I just wonder what that matchup looks like if you get Pivetta out after, say, 4 innings. And then all of a sudden, are you ahead are the Phillies ahead at that point? Are the Red Sox chasing because they can't get a hold of that changeup from Sanchez, and then it becomes a bullpen game, and then what's that like? I like a low scoring game in that game.
Well, the other thing is the Red Sox against the left-handed starting pitching, they struggled. So that's another factor that has to creep into it. So this has all the makings of a 3-2, 5-3 game.
I agree. I think it's a low scoring game.
Yeah, but then we go to game 3, and each game as we get further in, there's more drama. There's more build to it. You guys are throwing Aaron Nola out there, and the only person that I think from this Red Sox matchup pitching rotation that could even come close to an Aaron Nola is this year's Tanner Houck. We have dubbed him here with the Pesky Podcast and been okayed by Papelbon. Houckamania has been running wild over here in Boston. And, you're talking about Cy Young. In the American League, Tanner Houck is right up there in the Cy Young talks. He is number 2, I think, still behind Seth Lugo in ERA in the American League for the season. He has a sub-1 whip. It's just been absolutely crazy. He's been going consistently into the 7th inning.
Yeah.
And nobody, just like you said about your pitcher, no one on the Red Sox could have seen this coming from Tanner Houck this season.
No, I haven't either. And he's been really impressive to me. We talk about I threw out that ERA plus stat for Wheeler at 180. Tanner Houck is at 218. That means he's 118% better than the average pitcher in Major League Baseball this year. That's how good he's pitching, right? So yes, that is, to me, that's going to be my favorite game because I think you got 2 guys who know how to pitch and will be pitching, for a series. I think the teams are going to split the first 2, and I think that last one you're going to get Houck and Nola. And both guys have just been fantastic of late. And I don't know how you sit there and say, well, this guy's better than this guy or whatever the case might be. The Phillies may have a better lineup, and so maybe you give them the slight edge in that regard. But other than that, if you're looking at pure pitching, I think it's a fantastic matchup and probably the one I'm looking forward to the most of the 3 games.
Yeah, sit back and enjoy the show because it'll be a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you were talking about, adding pitches for Wheeler. Tanner Houck added a split finger. He's used it a lot more. His ground ball rate is I think is at 56 or 58%. So he relies a lot on his defense behind him. It all depends, in my opinion, who's playing second and who's playing short behind him in that game. Because we had today David Hamilton, playing shortstop, and there was a little miscue over there as he was trying to make a double play. If we have Ceddanne Rafaela playing shortstop, it's a completely different story. I personally think, and George will have his opinion, that the best infield shortstop second base combination that I've seen is Ceddanne Rafaela and David Hamilton playing second base, because any other combinations, we've had way too many errors at all.
And that's
totally
important. Yeah. That's important for a ground ball pitcher, right? I mean, he doesn't give up the home runs at all. I mean, what's he given up? 2 this year in 85 innings?
All year.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty incredible. He leads the Major League Baseball in fielding independent pitching amongst qualified starting pitchers, 2.21. That's an incredible number in and of itself when you think about it. So I mean, it's defense becomes all the more important. So a lot of times, I think sometimes fans miss it. It's like, well, why is this manager putting this lineup together? What's up with that? And sometimes they're going for a defensive lineup because they know how important it is to have a much better defensive lineup behind a guy. And so you might see, the bottom half of a lineup be kind of uninspiring offensively, but it makes a difference when you have a game like this where you're probably looking at a 2-1, 3-2 final score. And you sit there and go, well, maybe that defense makes a difference, right? And so it's funny that you talk about that, because I think that will matter more to a manager when it puts a lineup together than it would, than it does maybe to the fans.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It's we're looking at, it doesn't really matter where Ceddanne Rafaela plays defensively, center field, shortstop. He's leading our team in RBIs in the 9 spot. Like, that just shows, something there. It doesn't matter for that. But let's sit there and dive into let's go around the infield first. For us, we gave Rafa Devers an extra day off because he had knee soreness. He left the game yesterday. So hopefully he's be able to be in that lineup, because we definitely need his bat in that lineup to even have a fighting chance against you guys.
Yeah, Devers is your best offensive player, and I don't even think it's close. But if you look at third base for the Phillies, you got Alec Boehm, who is, you want to talk about a throwback hitter. He's a guy who's got 50 RBIs already this year, but he's only got 6 home runs. Right? I mean, normally it's maybe double. In this day and age, your RBI total's usually about double or just over double your home run total. He's driven in 5th, and he's the best hitter in baseball with runners in scoring position, leads the majors in doubles. He hits the all fields line to line. He's in a cleanup spot, but he's not a traditional cleanup hitter. He's just a solid hitter who's taking that next step. Not a lot of swing and miss in his game, makes a lot of contact. I guess the one weakness is he does still ground into some double plays. So, in that game Thursday, that would be a thing, obviously, against Houck being a ground ball pitcher. That could be an issue. But he will find his way. He'll go, he'll single to right field. He'll hit a double down a left field line. He could go anywhere on the field. And especially with runners on base and runners in scoring position, he's been the best hitter in the game this year. He's grown a lot. So, but I still think Devers is if you ask me if I pick a third baseman between the two, I'll take Devers every day, twice on Sunday, as good as Boehm's been this year. Yeah,
the Devers is MVP caliber number so far this year.
Yeah.
He's finally, even Alex Cora has said when he was in an interview that he is now locked in. People were saying, oh, he was locked in on that 6-game home run stretch. No, he's locked in now. He's hitting the opposite field. He's taking pitches. He's leading by example. He's not the typical clubhouse leader, with his voice. He is the leading by example, and he's like, I'll show you how to do it. Just and he's doing it sometimes in batting cleanup with Wong, batting behind him. He's just now got Tyler O'Neill back, behind him, protect him a little. If he's putting up these type of numbers with no one really protecting him, in an essence, I can't wait to see what type of numbers he can do when Tristan Casas comes back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're 1,000% right. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I mean, I think Devers to me is a top 3 third basemen in baseball, and might even be a little bit higher. It's hard to find many guys that are better than him in my mind. So yeah, he's definitely, if you're the Phillies watching this series, he's I think the bat that you have to worry about the most in the Boston lineup.
Absolutely.
So let's sit there and talk the middle infield, shortstop, second base. Who you got out there, Anthony?
So, normally we have Trey Turner in Philly, right? But he's been out for a little over a month with a hamstring strain. Won't be back for this series. I believe he'll be back for the Baltimore series. They haven't officially said that yet, but it's kind of trending in that direction. But the guy who has replaced him is Edmundo Sosa, and Edmundo Sosa led the Phillies in OPS in the month of May. This is a bench player who led the Phillies in OPS in the month of May. That's how well Sosa's played. And he's a very good defensive shortstop, too. He's probably a better defensive shortstop, honestly, than Turner. And Bryson Stott is your second baseman, mostly against right-handers. He will play against a lefty, but with 3 righties you guys are throwing, I would expect Stott at second base all 3 games. He hasn't hit like he did last year. At all. He's kind of been really inconsistent. And part of that has been one of the things that made him so special last year was his ability as a left-handed hitter to hit the ball to left field. He would hit that line drive over the shortstop or a double down the left field line, staying inside the baseball and going the other way. Well, teams have learned how to pitch him a little bit. And so now he's kind of getting under it a little. And he's hitting lazy pop-ups and lazy fly balls to left field as opposed to driving the ball that he did last year. So really not having the kind of year that he had last season, but he's an elite defensive second baseman. Very, very good. Probably would have won the Gold Glove were it not for Nico Horner on the Cubs last year in the National League. That's how good of a defensive second baseman he is. So you take what you can get out of Stott at this point, but he's not quite the offensive player he was a season ago.
Yeah, and our middle infield, we will sit there and put this middle infield out there, even though it's probably not our best defensively. So we will go with Valdez and Hamilton. So tell the Phillies fans about Valdez and Hamilton.
And Manuel Valdez is a hit for a second baseman. Okay, his calling card is his offense. His sneaky power can put one in the seats, and if you're not paying attention, has trouble making routine plays at times. Sometimes he'll go on a streak and it'll look great. Definitely has trouble with a pop-up. He gets sent back down, but he's up because Vaughn Grissom went down. At shortstop, David Hamilton. When David Hamilton was called up after Story got hurt, he had the game just was way beyond him. It was too fast for him. He was making throwing errors. He wasn't hitting. He settled down. I think, and I agree with Ritt, that the best infield we have is Rafaela at short and Hamilton at second, because Hamilton's a natural second baseman. Hamilton has settled down. He made an error today. Can't really fault him on it. He had a play that he was trying to do a scoop play to second base and it didn't work. But he settled down and he's playing doing an adequate job at shortstop. The thing with him is he has started to hit, which was always the thing you worried about, because if he didn't hit, he couldn't get on base. And this is a kid that stole 70 bases in the minor leagues, in one season. So, he's got jets. He's getting on base. He's hitting with power. He hit a home run today. He is one of what we call the 3 Jaguars in a row, with Rafaela, Hamilton, and Duran, that speed like nobody's got, 1, 2 in that order. So, you get on, these guys are running like rabbits. He's settled down. He's pushing his average up, and he's currently, I think, still above 280.
281.
281, yeah. And now he has that feeling. I think he knows he can play at this level, and he's starting to have confidence in his own game. Second base, is Valdez. If you don't see him, you're going to Jamie Westbrook, who's a nice story. After 11 years in the minors, he gets his chance, and in 1 week, he reaches base about every possible way he can without a hit, gets his first hit, and then, in a rout against Chicago, he hits his first dinger. But yeah, we're playing mix and match in the middle infield, kind of by design, because we've got nothing, of any substance right now. So.
Yeah. Now let's sit there and talk, Anthony, about first base now. Now you have a first baseman that has transitioned to first base.
Yeah.
So how's the defense? With Harper, being over there at first.
He's great over there. It's unbelievable how good of a first baseman he is, having played there for less than a year. If you look for mistakes from Harper, it's sometimes he gets caught watching a play, right, and doesn't, I got to go be the cutoff, or I got to back this up, or whatever, or maybe he makes a great diving play to his right that he could have let the second baseman get to, and maybe it ends up being an infield single. Those are the extremes, though. Like that's the worst of it. He has fielded the position fantastically. He has just been a huge upgrade at first base defensively over anything that they've had in a long time. It was a low bar set by Rhys Hoskins prior to that. It was not a very good defensive first baseman, so it wasn't a very high bar he had to clear. But he is significantly better than Hoskins was defensively. And then, of course, it's Bryce Harper, right? So offensively, he's one of the best hitters in the game. He's got 15 home runs already this year. He's probably going to be the all-star starting first baseman. You guys, I don't know if you saw the home run he hit yesterday, and he did the soccer slide into the dugout, which was funny as hell. He's just one of those guys. He is a showman. He's the stir that the straw that stirs the drink. He's a hell of a player.
Yeah, watching him now in Philly, being embraced by a city that would turn their back on you quick, then watching him play, down in DC for the Nationals, it's night and day. He has more fire now, at the plate, in the game overall, than he's ever had for the Nationals.
Yeah.
And then, and he's a pure athlete, and it shows. Another one that I can sit there and say, pure athlete, Mookie Betts. Yep. Being able to come right in, play second base. He's played shortstop this season. And we've always known him as an outfielder. Ceddanne Rafaela on our team, Gold Glove caliber shortstop and center fielder. So, but we're throwing out there at first base, kind of an old throwback. We got Dominic Smith out there, who sometimes moves like a cat over there around the bag at first, but then sometimes he's moving like a sloth, and he's way behind everything. Just like today when him and McGuire were trying to backpedal and throw out somebody at first, there had to be a sign, a connection between him and the catcher, and he was slow to get to it, and the ball went to the outfield.
He was a step and a half away from where it should have been on that. So
yeah, so it's I guess it's just good enough till we get Casas back. But the other day he had he had 2 errors in the same inning, and he tried to make it up with a home run, and he does have slight home run power, but we more need him there for his defense, and sometimes it's just slothed.
I will say this, for whatever reason, I don't know why, Dominic Smith kills the Phillies. He used to play for the Mets, right? So they played him a lot. I just looked it up. His career numbers against the Phillies: in 85 games, 284 plate appearances. He's hitting 284, 10 homers, 38 RBIs, 805 OPS. Kills
There
the
we
Phillies.
go.
So
Well,
for whatever reason, he hits the Phillies. So
well,
We could
AC
use that.
right there's your guy that you put right behind Devers. That's your
Yeah.
protection against the Phillies. So
for sure.
So and then let's go behind the plate for catcher. You know, you have one of the best in the league, top 3 in my opinion. We've got Connor Wong behind there, and I say Wong is probably top 5, top 6 in my opinion. But what can we expect from Real Muto?
Yeah, I'm going to be curious to see if he plays all 3 games. Played both in London. He's been beat up a little bit. He's been taking some foul balls. He had a knee injury. They actually pinch ran for him in the 9th inning today from second base, which is a rarity because he's probably the best base running catcher in baseball, right? And they pinch ran for him. So it makes me wonder if he's still feeling a little something. So you might not get him all 3 games. And the fact of the matter is, Garrett Stubbs, who's the backup catcher, is not a great hitter, but he has caught Aaron Nola a lot of late, and Nola has pitched really well with Stubbs catching. So it wouldn't surprise me if you saw Stubbs for Game 3. But Real Muto is having a resurgent season, especially since he's been moved up into that number 2 spot in the lineup. He's the guy that replaced Turner in that spot in the lineup when Turner went out with his injury, and he's been very, very good. So it's tough to. I mean, you guys got guys who like to steal bases, but it's tough to run on Real Muto.
Right.
So it's going to be that's an interesting chess match there, right? If your rabbits get on base, if they're going to test JT because he's got the best pop time in all of baseball with throwing runners at second base. So should be an interesting kind of like cat and mouse game there, I think.
Yeah, and it's great for you guys because now in the National League, you still want his bat in the lineup, you still want him on the bases, you slide him right over to the DH spot, and he could take a semi day off.
They won't take Schwarber out of the lineup though.
No.
So that it could happen. It certainly could, but I don't think they're going to take Schwarber out of the lineup.
Yeah, the other thing for us is that Wong has been doing it on both sides of the plate. He's hitting in the mid 320s. He simplified his approach. He's, I think, either number 1 or number 2, hitting with 2 strikes, and then and 2 outs, and he's coming up big. He always had the ability to show some power, but now his average is up there because he's like stopped all the motion and the toe taps and all that stuff, and he's just all business at the plate, and it shows. I mean, he can run. He's built like a middle infielder. He's not a prototypical catcher. Stocky body, tall, whatever. He looks like he can play second base, which he does on occasion, but he can run, and a lot like Real Muto can, and I mean, for us, he's kind of been the glue that's kind of helped in some of the transition of the injury slaughterhouse that has hit the Red Sox.
Yeah, well, Wong he started out the season really well, hitting 5 home runs. He hasn't hit a home run in the last 30 games.
Right.
So it's something, but his average is still up there. He's batting .329 for the year, which is, for a catcher, that's more than you can ask for, because there's only a handful of catchers, in Major League Baseball that can actually, consistently go out there and hit the ball. So let's go out to the outfield. And we're going to skip the DH because we don't have one. So
we have Schwarber. He leads off every game here in Philly.
Right.
But we'll sit there and we can add Schwarber to the outfield because
you guys know all about Schwarber, though. I mean, he played there.
Yes.
You guys know you know what he's about.
We should have extended him or re-signed him. That is one person I'm not looking forward to in this series for him to sit there and stick it to us for, not. But he's had a great time down there in Philly. But, let's sit there and talk. Let's start with the right fielder. And, you can lead it off.
Yeah, Nick Castellanos. If you look at his overall numbers for the year, he's not. They look at him like, oh my God, he's been terrible, and that's because for the month of April he was absolutely as bad as he's maybe ever been. It was a really, really bad month. He's been getting progressively better, and I'll tell you, if you go back to his last 18 games, he's got an OPS of 862 with 5 home runs, a bunch of multi-hit games. Striking out a lot less. So he's actually starting to heat up a little bit and starting to come around, which is the Phillies need, because their outfield, and as we'll get to the other positions, just isn't hitting. It's one of the worst hitting outfields, and believe it or not, for the best record in baseball, it's one of the worst hitting outfields in baseball. They're ranked bottom 5 overall. So Castellanos kind of getting going helps. He has the National League. This will blow you away, because he's not a very rangy outfielder by any stretch of the imagination, but he holds the National League record right now for most consecutive games played without an error. And outfielders don't make a lot of errors, right? But he holds the National League record, and he's approaching the Major League record. He's going to get, I think he's like 35 games away from the Major League record. He's never made an error since being with the Phillies. His last error was, I think, when he was with Cincinnati in the outfield. So he's not going to get to everything, but if he's not, he also doesn't make a lot of mistakes out there. He's kind of just, he does his job out there in right field. So he'll be in the lineup probably all 3 games, because he hasn't missed a game yet this year. And he is hitting a little bit better, so that he's going to look to continue that to try and help this Phillies offense.
Yeah, that is very impressive. Stat you threw out there, George. Let's sit there. Tyler O'Neill should be back in the lineup 100%. So let's sit there and talk Tyler O'Neill.
Yeah, I mean, he started off the season like incredibly hot. He got a little bit cool, and he collided with Raffy on inexplicable drifting into the outfield by Raffy. He's starting to come back a little bit. He left the game the other night with knee soreness again. He's day to day. He's been the ability. He has the ability to hit home runs, and he plays an outstanding outfield, and he can play left or right field for us. And has done it interchangeably. I'm hoping that the knee thing is he can kind of come back and play at Fenway. He can play in right field and kind of do what he needs to do out there, and just bear down and deliver some timely hitting, because we could certainly use it. Use his bat in the lineup. If you don't, you will see Rob Refsnyder, whose book is he's a left-handed pitching killer. Although this year it doesn't matter what thrust out of the plate, which arm you throw at him, he's killing both. So he's been a very solid contributor, and I call him one of the best fourth outfielders in baseball, because he can play all 3 positions at a high level. And he's not a speed burner, but he's got a halfway decent speed. But he's a great fourth outfielder. And how many teams can say that? So
yeah, let's talk center field, which is one of our shining spots on our whole team.
Yeah, and it's an advantage that you guys have, because center field is kind of I don't even know how to describe it. I don't want to call it a black hole, because it's not. You have 2 very good options defensively out there. Johan Rojas gets the bulk of the time. Christian Pache plays against lefties, so you probably won't see Pache in that series. You'll probably get Rojas all 3 games. He's as good as he is defensively. He's made a few blunders this year that were head scratchers, and he can't hit. He can't hit a lick, but he'll frustrate the opposition, because he gets some of the luckiest, cheapest singles you'll ever see. He's fast. He's incredibly fast. So sometimes he'll hit like a little off the end of the bat, 4 bouncer and get a hit. Or, he'll hit a little Texas League bloop over somebody's head. Like, oh my God, how did that fall? He gets those very, very lucky hits, but he's not a good hitter. Not patient at the plate, gets 2 strikes on him a lot. And he's as good as he is out in center field. He does have the propensity to make a boneheaded play from now and again. So it's probably the Phillies' weakest spot in the lineup and on the field overall. And I wouldn't surprise me if they look to upgrade the outfield at the trade deadline. Doesn't necessarily have to be a center fielder. It could be a left fielder, and they can move Brandon Marsh back to center field where he played previously. But I think that, it's probably the weak spot for the Phillies right now.
Yeah, and we have playing. We've dubbed him the human highlight reel, because if you just look up Google and put Cedillo Rafael catches, you're going to have at least 2 per series, and possibly even 1 per game, where he's just diving. It doesn't matter if it's center field or shortstop. He's making plays. And like I said earlier, he actually leads our team in RBIs from the 9 spot. So that just shows you right there that there's guys ahead of him are getting on base for him to be able to drive them in. So, and let's sit there and go. And you were talking about your center fielder. Fenway Park has a very difficult center field, the Bermuda Triangle out there. That there could, be even worse for your center fielder, because that ball can get lost out there.
He's actually really good going back on a ball. His struggles are actually coming in. Like, he makes mistakes or going to the side sometimes. And it's usually he overruns it, which is weird. Like, you think that a really good defensive center fielder would have a better idea on, when to slow up. And it's almost like he always gets there a little bit too early and has to make a play. But I don't worry about having a lot of room. I mean, he played out in San Francisco. He did a nice job when he was out there, which is another big center field. So I'm not too worried about the space. It's more like you sit there and go, oh yeah, Rojas will get that. And then he botches it. And it's like, what happened? There was a little bloop single today that bounced that he should have gotten. He took a step back and then charged in and missed it. And the effort was like, okay, keep it in front of you. And it bounced up and over his head. Thankfully for the Phillies, Whit Merrifield was backing him up. And so therefore it didn't end up costing, it wasn't an error, but it was a play where you're looking at it and going, what are you doing, dude? Like, you got to make that play. Like, that's you should have caught it. And then the fact that you didn't, you got to keep it in front of you. You did neither. And so it's like, it's mistakes like that, crop up here and there that make you worry a little bit about him out there.
Yeah. Well, let's go over to the Green Monster over there. Who do you have over there playing left?
Good question. So right now, Brandon Marsh got hurt in the last homestand in the Milwaukee series. A hamstring injury, put on the 10-day. So he won't be back for the Boston series. I think he'll be back for the Baltimore series, or maybe just after. So they recalled from AAA David Dahl, who you may remember, Colorado Rockies.
Colorado.
Yes. It was an all-star in 2019. And then he's had major shoulder injuries and never really kind of, reemerged after that. Had a cup of coffee with the Padres last year. Philly signed him to a minor league deal, and he's been tearing it up in AAA. 340 batting average, 12 home runs, like really just off the page. So they called him up to replace Marsh. But the problem is with David Dahl is 2 things. One, he's not very good defensively. And number 2, he can't hit left-handers. So you're in a little bit of a platoon out there. So I would expect Dahl to start those games. But I also would expect you to see if you bring in like Bernardino or whatever, another pinch hitter at that point. And it could well be Pache, Whit Merrifield, who's been starting against lefties, but he hasn't hit. Pache can't hit. They have Weston Wilson, who was a guy who came up for a cup of coffee, who can really hit lefties, right-handed bat, got some power. They could go with him. So it's just kind of like a mishmash without Brandon Marsh being available. But I would expect Dahl to be in the line. He hit a home run again, pinch hit home run today against the Mets. Gave the Phillies a 4-3 lead going into the ninth inning. So he's got some pop in that bat. He's looked good since he's come up in the 3 or 4 games he's played. So I would expect him to get the start.
Yeah, and we have over there in left field, we've got who I'm telling right now, if this guy does not make the All-Star team for the American League, you better sit there and have someone more deserving than Jarren Duran. He has led the majors with 10 triples. He has more triples by himself than 16 teams do total.
Yeah.
So, George, you want to sit there and talk a little more about Jarren Duran?
But he built upon his season last year where he found himself finally. He stopped trying to be a power hitter. He went with the tools that he has, speed, on defense and at the plate. He has improved his defense tremendously. I mean, he still doesn't always take the right route to the ball, but he's much better than he has been. He's a perfect leadoff hitter. I mean, you talk about somebody table setter. The guy had 10 triples, 6 or 7 or 8 doubles too, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then
17.
He's a threat to run at any time, and does, and that puts pressure on the defense, and particularly with the new rules in terms of how many engagements you can have and things like that. He's become a real problem on the base paths. Like I said, his defense has improved tremendously. I wouldn't put it at Gold Glove, but he's done an adequate job. He's had to split time between center and left field, depending upon where they play Rafaela. But he's done a fine job, and he's played every game for the Sox this season, and the only player who has. So he's been durable, and that's and a team that's been just beset with injuries like the Red Sox have in 2024. It's a blessing in disguise because it's probably the one consistency we can have is that we'll trot him out there at leadoff every night, and he just goes in there and does it, and he's kind of found himself as a person. So, yeah, that's Jarren Duran. Yeah, I think he belongs on the All-Star team because he brings speed. He's what a lot of players you'll see more of with the rule changes in baseball. Station to station running, waiting for the big bopping home run is all fine and good. But the rule changes have brought back speed, defense, and situational hitting. And I think he's doing all those things for the Red Sox and more. So, yeah, he's in many ways, he's been the true MVP for the Red Sox to date because of his durability and his ability to produce both offensively and defensively.
Yeah. So, okay, we're going to sit there and close this out with our last segment. We call it Around the Poll. Anthony, the floor is yours. Final thoughts, where everybody can find you at and read all your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I write for the website crossingbroad.com. You can find me there pretty much after every Phillies game. I also do some hockey as well. If you're into the hockey thing, so I cover some hockey. I have 2 podcasts. The baseball one is called Crossed Up, which you can get anywhere you get all your podcasts. It's predominantly Phillies based, but very much like you guys, we do talk about the other teams around the league. And I'm on Twitter at AntSanPhilly.
Okay. Well, we sit there and we love having you on. Anytime that we play the Phillies, we always reach out to you because there ain't nobody better than you, man.
Well, thanks, pal. I appreciate that.
So, George, what's the final thoughts for you?
Yeah, I mean, a 2-2 split in Chicago is not the best, but a win going into what could be either going to be a very good indicator of how tough this team is or the week from hell against both the Phillies and the Yankees is a better way to start the week. I'm excited to see how they perform against the Phillies, and it might be a true measure of how much grit and toughness this team does and how far the pitching can take them. So, yeah, and go Celtics.
And I'm going to sit there and close it up with, by far, this will be probably the best pitching matchup series we might have all season. And this is going to, a lot of people were, when we had the best starter ERA in April, we're like, let's see what they're like in June. Here's the test right now. I think they're either 5th or 6th in team starter ERA still, which isn't too shabby. And, it's in June, but you're going up against some of the best, not just the National League, but, in all Major League Baseball. So, and Celtics, let's take game 2 and, go to Dallas. So, but we're going to sit there and wrap this up now. Make sure you head on over to follow us at BSEN617 on YouTube. Subscribe wherever podcasts are available. We are on iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes. And make sure you head on over to our store at BSEN617.square.site. Check out all of our merchandise from the Halkamania shirts to the DWO, the Devers World Order. We are also throwing out some new merchandise, the Folk the Curse shirt, and a good one that I'm throwing out there for Pap, the Cinco Ocho, the class of 2024 Red Sox Hall of Fame for Papelbon. So, but for Anthony, for the OG George Sutherland and myself, thanks for stopping by the Pesky Podcast.